Hey guys, how's it going? So I just wanted to go through all of the 49ers picks in the draft and kind of see how they will fit in with the team. So first off, pretty impressive pick. A little bit surprising too, because I think he easily could have been a second rounder, but getting the wide receiver out of Florida, Ricky Pearsall, I think this was a really excellent pick. Really impressive wide receiver. I think a lot of other teams were disappointed that he got picked up so early, but really likes the middle of the field, which is why I think the 49ers will like him. Purdy will like him, and he has really good hands, hardly any dropped passes in all of his college career. So I could definitely see him filling in as their wide receiver 3 or even some design plays to put him in the slots. And he even takes jet sweep motions too, so I really think he'll be a perfect fit. He could also be a really good deep threat. He has a pretty good 40 time faster than Ayuk and Samuel. And he also has a really high vertical, so it can definitely jump up and get a lot of passes. Maybe the only downside is, so he's probably not going to favor in contested catches, but really if he is able to get his hands on the ball, he's not going to let go. And then in the second round, picking up the cornerback out of Florida State, Renardo Green. I think they really needed to upgrade their secondary, and he's a good fit for that because the 49ers really struggled on their run defense all season long. Also came up in the playoffs, especially with the Lions, even the Chiefs. I would also say the Packers had some pretty big bursts as well. And that's exactly where Green can shine. He's really good for the run defense, and he really did good against some of the top receivers in the draft, such as Malik Neighbors. So he has really good press coverage. He's really aggressive, plays really physical. He has a lot of penalties. I could definitely see him eventually getting a starting role. I think him and Charvarius Ward could be an excellent duo. And then in the third round, getting the offensive lineman out of Kansas, Dominic Pooney. And where he really shines is his pass defense, which is why I think he's a great fit for the 49ers line, because that's really where they were lacking last year as well. For his last season, he didn't allow a single sack. Doesn't have as good run defense, but I think really where they needed to fill in is to give Purdy more time and give Purdy a lot more protection. And he also can play multiple positions on the line, so you could throw him in as a tackle or a guard or anything like that. And then in the fourth round, getting the safety out of Wake Forest, Malik Mustafa. He's also an excellent upgrade for their secondary. With Hufanga coming back, and especially with him, I think they're really going to be solid, especially with those new cornerbacks. And he has a really big build, not extremely tall at 5'10", but pretty big for a safety, I'd say. He also has really good run defense. In comparison to Green, he didn't have any penalties throughout college, so he's not as aggressive, but he really has a lot of tackles with that big frame. So I think he's definitely someone you want in your backfield as a last resort if you really have to make a tackle. Another thing the 49ers struggled with last season was injuries on their secondary, Hufanga, for example, as well as some others. So I think especially with injuries, someone like him could really come into play and would be ready to go. And then in the fifth round, I also think this is one of the 49ers' great picks in this draft as well, getting the running back out of Wisconsin, Isaac Guerrero. And I think what really makes this interesting is that he had the fastest 40 time for any running back in the draft at 4.33, with probably one of the biggest frames coming in at about 221 pounds. So I really think the 49ers could use him as some sort of a fullback role in the future. Kyle Juszczyk is a little bit up there in age, so I definitely could see him becoming the new fullback, and they design a lot of special plays for him because he's really would be super fast for a fullback. Also does really good in terms of reception, so I think the 49ers could definitely utilize him. You also have Elijah Mitchell, who's really good in the red zone, but I definitely could see him being an alternate choice with McCaffrey in the backfield, and it could definitely be a nightmare for teams with both of them lined up. And really with that big frame, he also has excellent blocking, so I think if you're working some sort of a play action or a shotgun, you're really going to want to have him in there as a last resort to block for Purdy. 3. So I think he's a really good all-around choice for them. He also has some experience with the kickoff, so he could be a kickoff returner if they wanted to experiment with that. And then speaking of special teams, next pick here, Jacob Cowing in the 6th round. And he also did some punt returns in college, so he could definitely be their new punt returner. Pretty fast as well. Runs a 4.38, can get downfield. He's a slot guy, really small frame at 5'8", 163, but really an electric player. Has really consistent stats through all of his college years. So it really looks like the 49ers are trying to add a lot of speed to their receivers, and I think they might even change their playbook a little bit next year. I think they might be more aggressive, especially now that they have a pretty secure role with Brock Purdy, and again, he likes that middle of the field. 7th round, getting another offensive lineman, which I really think is a weak point for the 49ers. Jared Kingston out of USC. Like Pooney, he also has a lot of flexibility, can play pretty much everywhere. I could even see them putting him as a center in addition to a guard or a tackle, but pretty good frame. I don't think there's anything that speaks out in terms of his performance, but really just a decent lineman that could potentially fill in the future. And again, they really like that flexibility. And then in the 8th round, they got another linebacker, Tatum Bethune, especially with the Drake Greenlaw injury. I think they definitely need a few extra guys to be that next linebacker with Fred Warner. It does look like Greenlaw is going to make a good recovery. He says he wants to return by the beginning of the season, and that's his ultimate goal. I think he will return at some point next season. I think they're going to be cautious with him and maybe towards the middle, or maybe they'll just give him a few games as a buffer to make sure he's okay. But I think he'll definitely be back in there, but still got to have another backup and someone to fill in for him. In terms of positions, linebackers usually take a little bit longer to develop. Usually takes them about 2 to 3 years to really start playing and getting a feel as a starter. So I think he's definitely someone to have in the equation. So I really think the 49ers are really stacking up their lineup and their roster and are really filling in a lot of depth in the holes that they didn't have last season. So it'll be exciting to see where they're at for the 2024 season and how they could potentially do in the playoffs again. Feel free to let me know how you guys think the 49ers did in the draft this year. I appreciate you watching, and I'll see you later.